The rain hadn't stopped all morning. It came in thin, gray lines across the windshield, smudging the view of the cemetery gates. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel as my two kids sat silently in the back seat, dressed in black that didn't quite fit. My son's shoes were too small, my daughter's dress a little too big. I hadn't had the strength, or money, to care about details like that. I'm Claire, 33, from Denver. A registered nurse. A widow for 3 weeks. And somehow, still expected to smile and thank people for coming. The funeral passed in a blur of umbrellas and pitying glances. My parents stood near the front, stone-faced. My mother's pearls gleamed under the gray sky, her hand resting gently on my sister Sophia's arm, as if she were the one who'd lost everything. When the last handful of dirt hit the coffin, I felt the sound in my chest. Hollow. Final. The world didn't stop, it just got quieter. That night, we all gathered in my parents' house, the same one I'd grown up in. The smell of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air. My kids sat at the edge of the couch, unsure if they were allowed to touch anything. Sophia arrived late, of course. Her heels clicked against the tile as she swept in wearing a black designer coat. The kind that costs more than my rent. She hugged me, perfumed and perfect, whispering, "You'll be okay. You're strong." I wanted to ask her how she knew that. How could she? She'd never had to be strong. Dinner was quiet. Forks scraped against plates. My parents talked about her new boutique opening in Boulder. My father nodded proudly as Sophia described the challenges of entrepreneurship. Challenges. Like the $180,000 in debt she'd racked up over the years, credit cards, failed store leases, unpaid suppliers. I remembered the night my father told me they were helping her get back on her feet. He'd sold a piece of land, emptied a retirement fund, all to save her. When the conversation lulled, I finally said softly, "I could use some help too." My mother's fork paused midair. "Help?" "For a little while," I said. "Just until I catch up. The mortgage, the kids' school." She set her fork down. "Claire, we've done a lot lately. You understand that, right?" "Of course," I said. My throat felt tight. "But it's temporary. I'll pay it back." My father cleared his throat. "We can't keep bailing everyone out. We already did enough for one child this decade." The words hit harder than I expected. One child. Sophia looked away, pretending to check her phone. I nodded slowly. "Right. Of course." The rest of dinner blurred into silence. I washed dishes alone after everyone left, my hands trembling in the soapy water. My reflection in the kitchen window looked older than 33, tired, hollow-eyed, smaller somehow. When I got home, the house felt heavier than before. The kids were asleep on the couch, clutching each other. I tucked them in, then sat at the kitchen table surrounded by unopened bills. Medical fees. Funeral costs. Mortgage notices. I traced the edge of an envelope until my finger hurt. Outside, thunder rumbled over the city. I thought about Sophia's boutique, the one with marble counters and imported lights. The one my parents called an investment in her future. I'd been my husband's caregiver, working double shifts at the hospital, watching him fade day by day. No one came. No one called. But they had shown up for her, every time she cried, every time she failed. I wasn't angry yet. Not exactly. I was something colder. That night, I opened a notebook and started writing down everything I remembered about the family help fund my parents had mentioned years ago. Dates. Amounts. Promises. Just small details, things they probably thought I'd forgotten. I didn't know why I was doing it, only that I couldn't stop. Maybe I just needed proof that it wasn't all in my head. That I hadn't imagined the difference between us. By midnight, I closed the book and looked at my reflection again. I whispered, "You're on your own now, Claire." And for the first time, I said it without fear. Morning came with the sound of my phone alarm and the dull ache of survival. It had been 6 weeks since the funeral. I'd stopped counting the days, just the shifts. 12-hour nights at the hospital, back to back. I'd started skipping lunch breaks, pocketing the uneaten sandwiches from the staff fridge to bring home for the kids. Some nights, I'd get home so tired I'd forget to take off my shoes. My son, Jacob, would crawl beside me on the couch. My daughter, Lily, always whispered, "Mom, are we okay?" Yes, I'd lie. We're okay. But the truth was, I was drowning quietly. The mortgage notice turned red. Utilities followed. I'd pawned my engagement ring just to buy groceries. The cashier at the thrift store started recognizing me. Still, I smiled through it all, because mothers don't get to fall apart. One afternoon, I got a call from Sophia. Her voice was sugar-coated. "Claire, you won't believe it, I'm expanding the boutique. Mom and Dad are helping with the down payment. Can you come to the opening next month?" I stared at the phone, silent. She laughed lightly. "Don't be dramatic. You'll love it, everyone will be there." That night, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the stack of bills again. The same table where my husband used to drink his morning coffee, smiling at me over the rim of his mug. I whispered, "You'd know what to do." The next morning, I opened a small fireproof box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were old documents, tax files, a copy of my parents' will, a handwritten note from my father about shared family assets. It mentioned something about an inheritance fund, one meant for both daughters equally. My pulse quickened. Later that week, I stopped by my parents' house under the pretense of dropping off some old photos. My mother was in the garden. Sophia was inside, pacing with her phone pressed to her ear, talking about marketing budgets. I quietly slipped into my father's study, the room I hadn't entered since childhood. The same file cabinet stood there, second drawer labeled financials. I found it easily, one thin folder marked estate distribution. I didn't take it. I just opened it. My eyes caught the words, transfer of funds, beneficiary, Sophia Langford. The date matched the year after my husband and I bought our house. The same year they'd told me they were too tight on money to help with the down payment. A fund that was supposed to belong to both of us, gone. Signed over completely. I stood there frozen, staring at the document until my vision blurred. Then I closed the folder, put everything back exactly as it was, and walked out of that house without saying a word. That night, after the kids went to bed, I took out my notebook again. The one I'd started after the funeral. This time, the entries were sharper. Precise. Bank names. Dates. The words inheritance fund transfer underlined twice. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth. Because for years, they had told me I was loved equally. That everything they did was for the family. But the math never added up. By the time the clock hit midnight, my tears had dried. I felt something new inside me, something measured, steady. Not revenge. Not yet. But resolve. The next day, I went to the local library after work. Used the computer to look up property records under my parents' names. Cross-referenced them with Sophia's. Patterns appeared, small, quiet trails of favoritism carved into public record. Transfers, cosigns, cash gifts. When I printed it all out, the librarian looked at me curiously. "Research project?" I smiled faintly. "Something like that." At home, I hid the papers inside the kitchen cabinet behind a box of cereal. My kids laughed that night while eating macaroni from paper bowls. The power flickered, but we didn't mind. For the first time, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt like a place where truth was beginning to grow. If love was a transaction, I wrote at the bottom of the page, "Then I'm done paying full price for nothing." I closed the notebook, turned off the lights, and exhaled. Tomorrow, I would start preparing. Not for their approval, not for pity. But for the reckoning they never saw coming. It was the call I didn't expect. "Claire," my mother's voice trembled, "your father's been admitted again. His heart, it's worse this time." For a moment, I said nothing. The hospital hum filled the silence around me, the beeping monitors, the wheels of stretchers echoing in the hallway. I'd just finished a 12-hour shift, exhaustion running through my bones like cold water. "Do you need me to come?" I finally asked. "Please," she whispered. That word, please, hadn't come from her in years. 2 days later, I drove the 3 hours to my hometown with my kids sleeping in the back seat. The road was lined with late autumn trees, their leaves brittle and falling. I kept the radio off. Just the hum of the engine and the quiet in my chest. When we arrived, the house looked smaller. My childhood home, white walls, trimmed hedges, that same brass mailbox engraved with the Langfords. It was strange how places shrink when love does. Inside, the air smelled of disinfectant and old perfume. My mother looked thinner, older. My sister, Sophia, was pacing near the kitchen island, phone glued to her ear again. Finally, she said when she saw me. "He's upstairs. Mom's been a mess." Her tone wasn't cruel, just careless. The kind of carelessness born from always being rescued. I went upstairs quietly. My father was asleep, tubes running from his wrist, his breathing shallow but steady. I sat beside him, the nurse in me taking over automatically, checking his pulse, adjusting his blanket, noting the medications on the table. When his eyes fluttered open, he tried to smile. "Claire, you came." "Of course I did," I said softly. "I always do." He nodded weakly, as if that simple truth cost him something. Downstairs, I made tea for my mother. She thanked me like I was a guest. "How long has he been like this?" I asked. 3 days, she said, eyes darting toward the window. "Sophia's been helping, she took over some bills, coordinated the doctor." I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence unsettles them more than words. Over the next week, I stayed. Cooked, cleaned, took my father to his checkups, helped Sophia manage her spreadsheets. She looked tired but restless, her boutique wasn't doing well. I noticed the unopened letters from creditors in the drawer she tried to hide. I said nothing. I just watched. Because something had changed in me. I wasn't there to fix anything anymore. I was there to understand it, to study the machine of favoritism they'd built and watch it rust from the inside. At night, after everyone slept, I sat on the porch with a cup of cold tea, scrolling through documents on my phone, the property records I'd found, the inheritance transfer papers, the notes I'd taken for months. One night, Sophia joined me. She sighed dramatically. "You're quiet these days. Still mad about the money thing?" I turned to her. "No," I said calmly. "I'm past that." She smirked. "Good. Because Mom and Dad can't handle another lecture right now. I mean, they gave me that money to save the family's reputation. My debt would have ruined everything." Her words hung in the night air like smoke. She believed them. Every single one. "Right," I said softly. "They did what they thought was right." She smiled, satisfied, and went back inside. When she was gone, I whispered to the dark, "They'll learn what right really means." 2 days later, my father was discharged. He hugged me at the door before I left. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart. You've always been dependable." Dependable. That's what I was to them. Reliable. Predictable. Safe. On the drive home, I thought about those words. About how they used my reliability as their shield. And for the first time, I realized something: being dependable wasn't the same as being powerless. By the time I reached Denver, I already knew what I had to do. It wasn't anger guiding me anymore, it was precision. I'd spent months collecting evidence, connecting dots, building a timeline. And now I had the final piece: my father's declining health, Sophia's failing business, and a family name wrapped in silence. The perfect conditions for truth to surface. I parked the car, looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and whispered, "You're not the quiet one anymore, Claire." Because this time I wasn't coming back as the forgotten daughter. I was coming back as the storm they didn't see coming. The call came one Thursday morning. My mother's voice was sharp this time, not trembling. "Your father's been prescribed long-term care, Claire. The doctor says he needs to rest for months. Sophia and I can't manage the paperwork, can you handle it?" I hesitated only for a second. "Send me whatever you have." A thick envelope arrived 3 days later. Hospital bills, insurance papers, a few old property files. I spread them across my kitchen table that night after the kids fell asleep. At first, it was routine, checking forms, scanning signatures. Until I saw something strange, a land transfer document dated 8 years ago. Property value, $430,000. Location, Jefferson County. The owners listed, John and Margaret Langford, transferred to Sophia Langford. But the line below stopped me cold. Originally registered under joint beneficiaries, Claire Langford and Sophia Langford. My name, crossed out in ink. I stared at it for a long time, the kind of silence that fills a room before a storm breaks. My hands didn't shake. I'd expected this. Maybe not the exact form of betrayal, but its presence. They'd erased me. Officially. I took a deep breath and began sorting through every document, searching for patterns. The timeline formed itself like a confession, the inheritance funds signed over, the land transferred, the trust renamed, all within the same 2-year period. All during the time my husband was sick, when I was too busy working nights to notice. By midnight, I had a small pile of proof. Not of money lost, but of love measured and traded. The next morning, I called my father's accountant, pretending to be Sophia. It was a risk, but I knew the tone my sister used, confident, careless, entitled. "Hi, this is Sophia Langford. I'm just confirming the property records from Jefferson County. Did you send the final copies to my father?" He paused, then said, "Yes, Ms. Langford. All finalized. You and your sister were beneficiaries, but your mother had the paperwork amended years ago." I kept my voice steady. "And she signed that herself?" "Yes. Mrs. Langford handled it personally." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, and laughed softly. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. Out of the clarity that comes when the fog finally lifts. So it wasn't my father who erased me. It was her. That night, I stood in my kitchen, looking at the small pile of evidence, the fund documents, the property records, the notarized signatures. I thought of my children asleep upstairs, of their tiny hands clutching worn blankets. I thought of how my mother used to say, "We just want what's best for both our girls." And then I realized, she'd never meant both. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I opened my laptop and searched for a lawyer. I didn't need someone emotional or loud. I needed quiet precision. When I met with attorney Lyle Carter the next day, I brought a folder thick with papers. He read silently for 10 minutes, then looked up. "You have a case," he said simply. "Inheritance fraud, possibly property misappropriation. If these signatures are proven altered, your claim is solid." "What happens if I file?" I asked. "Everything under Sophia's name gets frozen until resolution. It won't be quick. But it'll be loud." I nodded slowly. "Loud is fine." We filed that week. Quietly. Carefully. My name re-entered the legal system the same way it had been erased, without warning. I told no one. At work, I smiled like nothing had changed. At home, I packed lunches, folded laundry, and read bedtime stories. But every night, after the kids were asleep, I'd pull out the case file and read it again like a prayer of justice. Each page was a reminder that silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. 3 weeks later, I received a notice, assets frozen, under investigation. Sophia's business, the boutique, her accounts, all tied to the same family trust that funded them. The first domino had fallen. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't warn. I just waited. Because justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, paper in hand, truth on its side, and no reason left to explain. As I turned off the light that night, my reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, calm, sharp, unafraid. I whispered to it, "You erased me once. Let's see how it feels to disappear." And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. It began on a Monday morning. I was charting vitals at the hospital when my phone buzzed nonstop, unknown numbers, missed calls, one after another. Then came a text from my mother. "Call us. It's urgent." I didn't. By noon, my sister's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it stopped, then finally opened her message. "What the hell did you do? They froze my accounts. My business is locked. Fix this, Claire." I set the phone down. My heart was steady. My coffee was still warm. The world, I realized, didn't end when they panicked. It only started to balance. That evening, after my shift, I drove back to my parents' house. The same driveway, the same porch light flickering like it always had. The air felt different now, heavier, like truth waiting to be heard. I walked in without knocking. They were all there. My father in his recliner, my mother pacing the floor, Sophia clutching her phone like a weapon. "Claire," my mother started, "what is this nonsense? Lawyers? Investigations? You've gone too far." I took a seat at the table. Calm. Centered. "You should sit down," I said. Sophia slammed her phone down. "You're insane. Do you know what this is doing to my company? To my reputation?" I looked at her, the same sister I used to braid hair with, share secrets with, before life turned into a scoreboard. "I know exactly what it's doing," I said. "It's showing the world how you built your life, on mine." My father sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "We made decisions for the family. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I cut in, voice steady. "You transferred my share of the inheritance, signed away my rights to the land, and lied about the fund that was supposed to support both your daughters." My mother's eyes flashed. "We had to help Sophia. She was drowning in debt. And I was drowning in hospital bills," I said softly. "Remember? You said you couldn't afford to help." For a moment, no one spoke. Only the ticking clock between us. Sophia laughed bitterly. "So this is revenge? You ruin me because you're jealous?" "No," I said, standing slowly. "This isn't revenge. It's correction." I reached into my bag and placed a stack of papers on the table, legal documents, photocopies, letters. The evidence. Their signatures. Their lies. "I didn't take anything from you," I said. "I just gave back what was already mine." My father looked at the papers, his face draining of color. My mother reached out, trembling. "Claire, you can't do this to your family." I met her eyes. "You already did." Silence. Heavy. Outside, wind scraped the trees against the windows. Sophia stood abruptly. "You'll regret this." I walked to the door, turning once. I already regretted loving people who only remembered me when they needed something. That part's over. Then I left. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. The cold air outside felt like freedom, sharp and clean. Over the next few weeks, the news spread quietly through the family. Neighbors whispered. The boutique shut down temporarily. Court proceedings began. My parents withdrew from their social circle, suddenly too ill for visitors. I didn't check in. I focused on my kids, on work, on rebuilding a life that wasn't defined by their approval. Every time I paid a bill on time, cooked a meal without fear of running out, I felt the weight of their control slip further away. One evening, as I was helping my daughter with her homework, my phone buzzed again, my father's number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. His voice was quiet. "Claire, your mother's not well. She wants to talk." I waited. He continued, "We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought you'd be fine." That sentence, "we thought you'd be fine," said everything. I took a breath. "I am fine," I said gently. "That's what scares you." He said nothing. Just the sound of his breathing, tired and small. "I hope you both find peace," I added. "I already have." Then I hung up. When I stepped outside that night, the sky was wide and quiet, the kind of stillness that feels earned. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter or the dependable one. I felt like someone who had finally taken back her name. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice once. It's been 8 months since that day. The court ruled in my favor, inheritance reinstated, assets returned. Sophia's debts were officially her own now, and the documents that once erased me had been declared fraudulent. The irony was almost poetic. The truth, long buried, had simply outlasted the lies. But justice isn't loud. It doesn't march in with banners or applause. It arrives quietly, like dawn light creeping through a cracked curtain. The first morning after the verdict, I took my kids to the park. The air smelled like wet grass and new beginnings. My daughter ran ahead, chasing pigeons. My son clung to my hand, laughing, his cheeks pink from the cold. I remember standing there, watching them, realizing that this, not the money, not the victory, was the real peace I'd been searching for. I'm Claire. 34. Widow. Nurse. Mother. But more than that, I am free. Underscore 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 underscore. After the fallout, my parents sold their house and moved to a smaller town. I didn't attend their farewell dinner, but I sent flowers. Not out of forgiveness, out of closure. Sophia tried to reach me once. A short message. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I read it twice, then deleted it. Happiness wasn't the right word. I wasn't happy that she'd fallen, I was relieved that I'd stopped being the one always holding her up. Life has a strange rhythm. It punishes you in silence and rewards you in whispers. My home feels different now. Sunlight hits the living room in the morning, soft and golden. The fridge hums quietly. Bills are paid. The house smells like lavender soap and pancakes on Sundays. Sometimes, when I pass the old wedding photo of my husband on the wall, I tell him softly, "We made it." For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter or the dependable one. I felt like someone who had finally taken back her name. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice once. It's been 8 months since that day. The court ruled in my favor, inheritance reinstated, assets returned. Sophia's debts were officially her own now, and the documents that once erased me had been declared fraudulent. The irony was almost poetic. The truth, long buried, had simply outlasted the lies. But justice isn't loud. It doesn't march in with banners or applause. It arrives quietly, like dawn light creeping through a cracked curtain. The first morning after the verdict, I took my kids to the park. The air smelled like wet grass and new beginnings. My daughter ran ahead, chasing pigeons. My son clung to my hand, laughing, his cheeks pink from the cold. I remember standing there, watching them, realizing that this, not the money, not the victory, was the real peace I'd been searching for. I'm Claire. 34. Widow. Nurse. Mother. But more than that, I am free. Underscore 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 underscore. After the fallout, my parents sold their house and moved to a smaller town. I didn't attend their farewell dinner, but I sent flowers. Not out of forgiveness, out of closure. Sophia tried to reach me once. A short message. I lost everything. Are you happy now? I read it twice, then deleted it. Happiness wasn't the right word. I wasn't happy that she'd fallen, I was relieved that I'd stopped being the one always holding her up. Life has a strange rhythm. It punishes you in silence and rewards you in whispers. My home feels different now. Sunlight hits the living room in the morning, soft and golden. The fridge hums quietly. Bills are paid. The house smells like lavender soap and pancakes on Sundays. Sometimes, when I pass the old wedding photo of my husband on the wall, I tell him softly, we made it. Because in a way, this fight wasn't just mine, it was his too. He taught me to stand straight, to never confuse kindness with weakness. I used to think strength was loud, now I know it's calm, deliberate, unshakable. Underscore 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 underscore. One evening, I went back to the hospital roof where I used to stand after shifts, the place where grief had once swallowed me whole. The city stretched below, glittering like a map of everything I'd survived. I closed my eyes and whispered a quiet thank you, not to them, but to myself. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for fighting with grace. Thank you for remembering your worth when no one else did. Underscore 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 underscore. A few months later, an envelope arrived, thick, handwritten, no return address. I knew the handwriting before I opened it. My mother's. Claire. We've lost more than money. We lost you. We thought we were protecting the family, but we broke it instead. I hope someday you'll forgive us, not for us, but for you. I read it in silence, then placed it in the drawer next to my husband's watch. Forgiveness, I decided, doesn't have to mean reconnection. Sometimes, it's simply choosing not to carry the pain anymore. That night, as the kids slept, I made tea and sat by the window. Rain tapped against the glass, steady and soft. I didn't feel the ache anymore. Just peace, deep, earned peace. Underscore 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 underscore. Weeks later, I was called to a hospital room, an elderly woman needing comfort. When I entered, she looked up at me and smiled faintly. You remind me of my daughter, she said. I smiled back. Then I'll take good care of you. And in that moment, I understood something simple but profound. Healing doesn't mean erasing what hurt you. It means growing around it, stronger, quieter, wiser. As I left her room, the hallway lights glowed warm against the linoleum floors. The scent of antiseptic and coffee mixed, ordinary, human, alive. I whispered to myself. It's over. Then, softly. And I'm still standing. Outside, dawn was breaking again, pale light spilling over the city I'd rebuilt my life in. No rage. No bitterness. Just calm breath, steady steps, and a heart finally unburdened. Justice had come. Not as vengeance, but as peace.